I'm Sandra Sanchez. I'm the opinion editor for the Monitor newspaper. So I'm in charge of the opinion page. I sit on the editorial board with the publisher vice president of the Monitor. We write editorials. Basically, I write an editorial every day that we take a position on something. I also edit the guest columns and the letters to the editor. I'm in charge of going out in the community, finding out what's going on, how we should weigh in on an issue, if it's important to weigh in on an issue. With regards to editorials, we don't endorse candidates, but we will endorse like a bond proposition. But we meet with lots of people. Senate candidate Beto O'Rourke just reached out an hour ago. He's coming May 2nd. So that's pretty cool. And he knows we don't endorse, but he still wants to sit down and meet with us. So
that's cool.
Yeah. Well, as far as creating more work, it created more competition because a lot of people post what they think is their own news, and it started taking away from our jobs. So it became, we had to realize that a lot of people were getting their information from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we needed to keep up with our postings. I post all the stuff that I do. So I repost it on my personal account. I retweet it. I spend a lot of time actually designing. I spend a lot of time at the end of the day. I have a page proof, and I have to send every element online to Facebook and Twitter, like everything. Her picture, her column. This was today's page, the cartoon, and then I spend a lot of time crafting my tweet so that I get the handles for everybody. Like here, I wanted to make sure that I got the the TEA and special education with the hashtag, so, and if I do immigration, I do hashtag immigration, so I spend a lot of time so that it triggers a lot of interests in the people who might follow it so that I get picked up. I look at the top 10 list to see if I've made it, and then I go back and see what I did. Sometimes it has to do with the time that I post. I used to post everything kind of overnight, midnight to 3 a.m. Well, actually 8 a.m. is the time most people look at stuff. But we can't all be at 8 a.m., so we kind of fight over 8 a.m., right?
Oh, so it's like scheduled.
We pre-schedule them.
Oh, okay.
Because I'll know what's coming out tomorrow. So before I leave today, I'll pre-schedule my editorial to run at what time. And depending if it's about Congressman Cuellar, and I know he's in D.C. and I'm going to do his handle, and it's about something about him, I might do it an hour earlier because the people on the East Coast are an hour earlier. And they get up earlier. And they read their stuff a little bit earlier. So I'm trying to get eyes on it. Well, people are interested in what's going on. We're always collecting information 24/7, whereas in the past you would wait for the 5 o'clock or the 6 o'clock news and the noon news, and now it's a 24-hour cycle, and so everyone's always informed.
That's usually how I get my news. Like, I'll see it on my feed and I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that.
Like the Southwest Airlines plane with the engine that fell, right? So immediately that was shared, and shared and reshared.
A woman fell out, not kind of went through the window, right? Or something
she
like
got
that?
sucked out. And so she suffered all this head and neck trauma, and she died.
Wow.
The New York Times actually had the best piece that I read so far on it. And they had a graphic this morning, and it showed she was in aisle 14 and the seat against the window. So on the left side of the plane, I guess that's on the port side of the plane, and there was a huge hole there was a huge hole in aisle 13, 14, and 15. So I wonder, everybody on aisle 14 in those planes today, were they like, no, I went off, I want to be like, but they had this wonderful piece, and it had a graphic, which is very visual for younger people. And they had interviewed all these passengers. It was really riveting, gave me chills. It was a very moving piece. And it was a long piece. but the kind that makes you cry, just puts you there minute by minute, what the people were doing. Some people even fought with each other over who could enter the gate first. Like we had an argument, and somebody did this and somebody did that, and then all of a sudden, the mask came down and everybody was holding hands. Strangers were praying with one another, and suddenly they were all united.
Yeah.
And it was wonderfully reported.
That sounds good.
It was great, and it's the kind of piece that you hope everyone shares and reads, because and it was longer. I mean, I would say it was a 30 or 40-inch piece, but I read every word. It's
It sounds like the type of piece that would keep you, like, you wouldn't really mind that it being long, like you would just just read it without really thinking, like, oh my god, like it's never ending.
Yeah.
It sounds interesting. It's in the New York Times?
That was in today's New York Times.
Okay, I'll look into it. It sounds good. So what about like the negative outcomes from social media?
Well, there's a lot of fake news. News that it's not news, I mean, ethically speaking, we go to school to learn to be journalists, and we have certain morals and codes that we follow. People who just blog or post things, they don't do that. It's like calling yourself a chef, but you don't really know proper food handling. You could make someone sick, right? And so and it doesn't help that we have a president that refers to us as fake news and degrades our occupation. And then also negative social media, all the people that weigh in sometimes just instantaneously without any thought. When I write columns, I get so much hatred from some people. They'll just post, we don't care. They'll just say really, really negative things. Sometimes they'll call and leave voicemail messages. And usually the people that leave voicemail messages, if they're not for me, sometimes they leave really nice messages. But other times they leave a very thoughtful reason why they disagree with my argument. That's great. I wish more people would take a moment before they just post on social media. Usually journalists do. I've worked several states, several newspapers.
It's exciting.
So where do you want to work?
Where? I don't know yet. Because I'm right now, I'm kind of in between of like not knowing what I want to do. Either I want to become a journalist, or if I want to go to law school. So it's kind of like either like plan A, plan B, but they're both kind of like plan A. So it's still like I'm kind of like undecided right now. But I mean, I love writing, so I would love to like be able to write, and be out there and getting stuff, and
Law will pay a lot more money. And actually, there have been times that I've thought, I wish I went to law school, because your writing skills are really important. But journalism's really fun.
Like you get in, I remember when you had come to our class, and you had told us about when you were, what riots did you cover?
The Los Angeles riots?
Yeah, and that, I don't know, that sounded just so cool, dangerous, but cool, just being there, and you can't do that with a lawyer,
Right. And let me show you a picture last Thursday, let's see here. So last Thursday, wasn't sure, what my day was going to be like, and next thing the governor shows up, and next thing I'm waiting in a room with a bunch of media for an hour, and then they lead us back. Actually, we waited for about an hour and a half to this room where we watched the governor giving, that's the head of Border Patrol, Manuel Padilla, a briefing, and he was meeting the National Guard troops, and we were just allowed to see it, and then they brought us into the armory where the National Guard troops, and there we are, all of us. There were 40 or 50 of us. We sat on this armory cement floor. I sat on the floor. I wasn't going to stand. With and you befriend other journalists. Molly Hennessy Fisk. She's a LA Times reporter. She's awesome. She's based out of Houston. She's really good. And she just came back from Syria. She just went to Syria 3 times to cover the war over there. and she was back, and so we sat down and we were just waiting, kind of catching up, and then it gets quiet and everybody starts to type with their stuff, and in rolls the governor, and he only took 4 questions, and I got one of the questions. And his press guy knows us from editorial boards because he's come in and we've met with the governor privately several times. He's invited us up to Austin as well. And I saw him and I was like, "Hey, John." He was like, "Sandra." So when I raised my hand for a question, other people, he was like, "You, red shirt. You, blue shirt." Me, he said, "And the next question's from Sandra Sledge, the monitor." And, and the governor saw me and he gave me a little smile. 'Cause we've been to his house. He had us over for a Christmas party and with the press, and it was like, "Hi, Governor." And I got to ask him a question. And so that was cool. Driving back from Westlake, I was like, "Hey, I might have waited 3 hours, but that was a pretty cool day."
That's cool. Like, your day's not really, not always the same,
It's never the same.
I feel like if you're a lawyer, just in your, writing, doing briefings or whatever, and, with journalists, you're out there, you're moving around, and you're seeing everything, firsthand.
And you just become your own motivator. Like, you're the one driving yourself. So go, whenever you get a story, you should come back with 2 or 3 other stories from your sources. They should be like, "Oh, and by the way, this is also a story." And then you write it down and you've got your whole list, and you just always keep going. Because if you don't, an editor's going to assign you some stupid story that you don't want to do. So if you're always busy, then you're always working, you're always producing. It's fun.
Yeah, sounds fun.
Yeah. Well, any other questions? Any other? Can I show you the newsroom? Show you around? Okay.
Yeah.
My days are different. It's kind of like always swirling ahead, catching up behind. Like I'm always trying to track on Twitter. I'm trying to keep up with the wires, trying to figure out what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And then buckle down, decide what pieces are going to be on my page, start editing or writing whatever pieces I need to do. Reporting the editorials, because I go to meetings myself, or I call sources, I interview people. A lot of opinion editors don't do that. A lot of opinion editors just rely on what's written in the newspaper. Sometimes I will just go to a reporter and ask them, "Hey, you were at that city council meeting. How, this went down like this. Do you have any notes that you didn't use, or any other perspective that helps me understand it better?" But a lot of times I make my own calls and I go out. My days are different. I design my own page every day because that allows me the ability to move stuff around. And then I get to the end of the day, typically what happens, and this pertains to UTRGV because I do get a lot of classes that send me letters to the editor. And I'll get to the end of the day and here's the space maybe I have left for letters. And so that determines maybe there's 3 letters in there. If this column wasn't so big and I was up here, I could have maybe had 5 letters. And so this allows me every day to just work at my own pace and the way I need it.